At 3:17 a.m., 12 hours after saying "I do," she woke up screaming. Her husband watched in absolute terror as dark lesions erupted across her skin, spreading like wildfire. The woman who had danced in his arms just hours before was writhing in agony, her flesh literally dissolving before his eyes. The sweet smell of decay filled their honeymoon suite as her skin began falling away in sheets. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't random. Someone had deliberately poisoned a bride on her wedding night with a chemical so rare, so deadly, that even doctors had never seen anything like it. But what kind of monster would target a bride on the most sacred night of her life? Welcome to True Crime Journal HQ. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily update on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Melissa Hartwell was born on a crisp October morning in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, to parents who embodied the Heartland's values of hard work and kindness. Her father, Tom, spent his days at the Quaker Oats factory, while her mother, Linda, taught third grade at Roosevelt Elementary. Their modest two-story home on Franklin Avenue became the neighborhood gathering spot where Melissa's infectious laugh could be heard echoing through the backyard during summer barbecues. From elementary school through high school, Melissa possessed that rare quality that drew people to her like moths to a flame. She wasn't just popular, she was genuinely beloved. Teachers adored her eagerness to help struggling classmates, and peers respected her ability to include everyone, even the quiet kids who ate lunch alone. During her senior year at Washington High School, Melissa earned a spot on homecoming court, not through political maneuvering or social manipulation, but because her classmates genuinely wanted to celebrate someone who had made their high school experience brighter. She volunteered at the local animal shelter every weekend and organized food drives that collected more donations than any previous student effort. However, this same trusting nature that made Melissa so lovable would eventually become her greatest vulnerability. She saw the best in everyone, often overlooking red flags that others might catch. At the University of Iowa, Melissa thrived as a marketing major, throwing herself into campus life with characteristic enthusiasm. She joined the student volunteer organization and spent her weekends helping build houses for Habitat for Humanity. It was during one of these Saturday morning builds in March of her sophomore year that she first noticed David Thornton. David was hammering shingles with focused determination, his engineering precision evident in every measured strike. When Melissa offered him a bottle of water during their lunch break, their conversation flowed effortlessly from construction techniques to their shared love of hiking the trails around Iowa City. Their relationship developed naturally over study sessions at the main library and long walks along the Iowa River. Friends called them the perfect couple. David's analytical mind complemented Melissa's creative spirit, while her warmth softened his sometimes rigid personality. They supported each other through tough finals, celebrated internship acceptances together, and spent countless hours planning their future. Melissa's social circle expanded as she became involved in campus marketing competitions and professional development workshops. She dreamed of working for a major advertising agency, while David pursued his mechanical engineering degree with plans to design sustainable energy systems. Their complementary ambitions seemed to promise a bright future together. After graduation, Melissa landed her dream job as a marketing coordinator at TechFlow Innovations, a rapidly growing startup specializing in agricultural software. Her campaigns increased client engagement by 40% within her first year, earning recognition from industry publications and a promotion to senior coordinator. Melissa approached wedding planning with the same meticulous attention to detail that made her successful professionally. She created elaborate spreadsheets tracking everything from floral arrangements to seating charts, determined to give her family and friends the celebration they deserved. She spent months researching vendors, tasting cake samples, and coordinating with the historic Brucemore mansion to ensure every detail would be perfect. Her relationship with her younger sister Katie remained particularly close. Katie, now a nursing student at the University of Iowa, served as maid of honor and helped Melissa navigate the countless decisions involved in planning their October wedding. The sisters met for coffee every Sunday morning, sharing dreams, fears, and excited planning discussions about Melissa's upcoming marriage. Melissa's life appeared to be unfolding exactly as she had always hoped: a loving relationship, a fulfilling career, and a tight-knit family who supported her every decision. Have you ever known someone who seemed to have it all together? Someone whose life looked picture-perfect from the outside? Saturday morning arrived with golden sunshine streaming through the windows of the Hartwell family home on Franklin Avenue. Melissa bounced between rooms like a hummingbird, checking and rechecking every detail while her bridesmaids attempted to keep her calm. The dining room had been transformed into wedding headquarters, with Katie coordinating the arrival of flowers, the photographer, and various vendors. At 9 a.m., the catering team from Riverside Events arrived to prep appetizers that would be transported to Brucemore Mansion. Melissa chatted excitedly with the head caterer, Mrs. Patterson, about the menu timeline. However, it was the quiet assistant trailing behind, a thin woman with sharp cheekbones and cold grey eyes, who caught Katie's attention. "I don't recognize her from our tasting," Katie whispered to Melissa during a brief pause. "Oh, that's just temporary help for the busy season," Mrs. Patterson quickly explained when asked. "Rachel's been with us for months." The woman called Rachel barely spoke, focusing intently on her prep work while stealing occasional glances at Melissa. Something about her intense stare made Katie uncomfortable, though she couldn't explain why. The ceremony at Brucemore Mansion was everything Melissa had dreamed of. Autumn leaves created a natural carpet as she walked down the aisle to David, who waited with tears in his eyes. Their vows brought laughter and happy tears from the 150 guests gathered on the mansion's historic grounds. As the reception began, Melissa mingled effortlessly with guests, accepting congratulations and posing for countless photos. The signature cocktail station featured her favorite drink, a lavender gin fizz that the bartender crafted specifically for her refined palate. She had insisted on this personal touch, wanting something uniquely hers at the celebration. Around 7 p.m., Melissa mentioned to David that her stomach felt slightly queasy. "Pre-dinner jitters," she laughed, sipping her third gin fizz. "I've been too excited to eat much today." By the time the first dance began, Melissa was visibly uncomfortable, shifting her weight and occasionally pressing her hand to her abdomen. Guests attributed her pale complexion to wedding day emotions and the stress of hosting such a large celebration. Have you ever felt like something was off but couldn't put your finger on it? That nagging sensation that told you to pay attention even when everything appeared normal? Despite her discomfort, Melissa continued smiling and socializing, determined not to let anything diminish her perfect day. As the evening progressed, Melissa's condition became harder to hide. She excused herself to the restroom twice within an hour, returning each time looking more drained. David suggested she sit down, but Melissa insisted on greeting every guest personally. "It's just wedding stress," she assured concerned relatives. "I'll be fine once we get to the hotel." The mysterious catering assistant, Rachel, seemed to hover near the cocktail station, refilling garnish trays and observing the celebration with unusual intensity. When asked about dietary restrictions for a guest, she demonstrated surprising knowledge of individual attendees' preferences. Katie noticed Rachel watching Melissa with particular focus, especially when she ordered another gin fizz. The assistant's lips curved into what might have been a smile, though her eyes remained cold and calculating. "Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. If you made it to this point, drop a comment with, 'I'm still here.' Let's see who is still watching. If you are enjoying this content, like, subscribe, and share it with your loved ones to protect them from the same tragedy happening to them in the future." But what Melissa didn't know was that with every sip, she was sealing her fate. At 11:15 p.m., David and Melissa finally escaped to their honeymoon suite at the Hotel Kirkwood, both exhausted from the long celebration. The elegant room overlooked the Cedar River, with champagne chilling in a silver bucket and rose petals scattered across the king-sized bed. Under normal circumstances, this would have been the perfect romantic setting to begin their married life. But Melissa could barely appreciate the thoughtful touches. She collapsed onto the velvet armchair by the window, pressing both hands against her stomach. "I feel like I'm burning from the inside out," she whispered, her voice strained with pain she could no longer hide. David knelt beside her, studying her pale, clammy skin with growing alarm. "Honey, you look terrible. Maybe we should call a doctor." "No, please," Melissa insisted, attempting a weak smile. "I don't want to ruin our wedding night over some stomach bug. I probably just ate too much cake." David wasn't convinced. His engineering mind searched for logical explanations. Food poisoning from the reception, exhaustion from months of wedding planning, or perhaps a reaction to the new perfume she'd worn for the first time. He helped her change into comfortable pajamas and brought her water, hoping rest would help. Melissa managed to drink half a glass before nausea overwhelmed her again. She spent 20 minutes in the bathroom, dry heaving while David paced outside the door, feeling utterly helpless. When she emerged, her legs were shaking and angry red welts had appeared along her arms. "David, something's really wrong," she admitted, no longer able to maintain her brave front. "This isn't normal wedding day stress." He wrapped his arms around her trembling form, whispering reassurances he didn't quite believe himself. Neither of them understood they were living through the final hours of Melissa's normal life. The poison was working exactly as intended, breaking down her cellular structure from within while they searched for innocent explanations. David jerked awake to the sound of screaming, not the startled cry of a nightmare, but the raw, primal shriek of someone experiencing unimaginable agony. He fumbled for the bedside lamp, his heart hammering against his ribs as the light revealed a scene from hell itself. Melissa was writhing on the bed, her skin erupting in dark, weeping lesions that spread like spilled ink across her torso. The beautiful woman he'd married just hours before was becoming unrecognizable, her flesh literally separating from muscle in ragged sheets. Her nightgown was soaked with blood and a clear, foul-smelling fluid that made David gag. "Help me!" she gasped between screams. "Something's eating me alive!" The stench hit him next, a sickening combination of rotting meat and metallic blood that filled the room like a toxic cloud. David grabbed his phone with shaking fingers, his engineering training completely useless in the face of this biological nightmare. 911, what's your emergency? My wife. Oh God, her skin is falling off. We're at the Hotel Kirkwood, room 412. Please hurry. Melissa's screams intensified as more lesions appeared on her face and neck. David tried to comfort her, but every touch seemed to cause more damage. Her skin felt hot and spongy, like it might tear away completely if he applied any pressure. The sound of her pain will haunt David for the rest of his life, not just the volume, but the desperation, the confusion, the plea in her voice asking him to make it stop when he was powerless to help. What would you do if you woke up to find your spouse in this condition? How do you process something so far outside normal human experience? Captain Robert Hayes had seen everything in his 28 years as a paramedic: car accidents, industrial injuries, drug overdoses that defied medical explanation. But when he stepped into room 412 at the Hotel Kirkwood, even his experienced composure cracked. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, immediately calling for additional units and a hazmat team. "We need the burn unit at University of Iowa hospitals prepped for immediate arrival." His partner, Lisa Chen, began administering IV fluids, while Hayes tried to assess the extent of Melissa's condition. The lesions covered 60% of her body and continued expanding despite their efforts. Neither paramedic had seen cellular breakdown this rapid and extensive. "What could cause this?" Hayes asked David as they prepared Melissa for transport. "I don't know," David replied, tears streaming down his face. "She was fine yesterday. We just got married." The ambulance ride to the hospital became a race against time as Melissa's vital signs fluctuated wildly. The medical team at University of Iowa hospitals mobilized their best specialists, but even they stood speechless when Melissa arrived. Dr. Amanda Foster, head of the emergency department, would later describe it as the most disturbing case of her career. But the real horror was just beginning to unfold. Detective Linda Kowalski received the call at 4:23 a.m. on Sunday morning, just as she was settling into her first cup of coffee. 23 years on the Cedar Rapids police force had prepared her for most situations, but the description from the hospital left her baffled. "Victim is a 28-year-old female married yesterday," the duty sergeant reported. Severe chemical burns covering most of her body, but no external chemical source identified. Husband claims she was fine when they went to bed. Kowalski's first instinct pointed toward domestic violence. Statistics showed that husbands were responsible for 85% of violence against newly married women. David Thornton fit the profile perfectly. Engineering background meant access to chemicals, and his story about Melissa's sudden illness seemed conveniently vague. She arrived at University of Iowa hospitals, expecting to find a wife-beater with a sophisticated cover story. Instead, she found a devastated young man who couldn't stop shaking, his wedding tuxedo still wrinkled from sleeping in a hospital chair. "Mr. Thornton, I need you to walk me through everything that happened last night," she began, studying his reactions carefully. David's account was consistent and detailed. He described Melissa's gradual decline throughout the reception, their conversation in the hotel room, and his horror upon discovering her condition. His genuine anguish seemed authentic, but Kowalski had learned not to trust initial impressions. The first break came Tuesday morning when the toxicology report landed on her desk. Instead of common acids or household chemicals, the lab had identified something completely unexpected: a rare industrial solvent used exclusively in high-end leather processing. Dr. Patricia Williams from the State Crime Lab called Kowalski personally to explain the findings. "Detective, this compound is called hexachlorocyclohexane 7. It's manufactured by only 3 companies nationwide and requires special licensing to purchase. The chemical was designed to break down protein structures in animal hides, making leather supple and workable. When ingested by humans, it caused catastrophic cellular destruction from the inside out, exactly what had happened to Melissa." "How much would be needed to cause this damage?" Kowalski asked. "Less than 2 ounces mixed into a drink would be fatal within hours. The victim would experience increasing discomfort as the compound worked through her system, then rapid tissue breakdown once it reached critical concentration." This discovery transformed everything. The attack wasn't random violence or a crime of passion. It was meticulously planned by someone with access to specialized industrial chemicals and detailed knowledge of Melissa's habits. Kowalski returned to the wedding reception venue, interviewing staff and reviewing security footage. The signature lavender gin fizz emerged as the obvious delivery method, since Melissa was the only person who ordered that specific drink throughout the evening. The bartender, Randy Martinez, remembered preparing 4 gin fizzes exclusively for Melissa. "She was real particular about that drink," he recalled. "Had me make it exactly the same way every time. Extra lavender, light on the gin." Security cameras showed multiple people near the cocktail station throughout the evening, but one figure caught Kowalski's attention. The catering assistant, who had helped serve appetizers, spent considerable time near the bar area, often when Melissa was ordering her signature drinks. "Has something like this ever happened in your community? A crime that seemed impossible to solve, where the method was so unusual that investigators had to learn an entirely new type of forensic science." Kowalski drove to Riverside Events Monday morning, expecting to interview the mysterious catering assistant who had caught her attention on the security footage. Mrs. Patterson met her in the cramped office behind the commercial kitchen, wringing her hands nervously. "I'm afraid Rachel quit Sunday morning," Mrs. Patterson explained. "Called in sick, then texted that she was moving out of state for family reasons. Very sudden." "Do you have her full name and address?" Mrs. Patterson's face flushed red. "That's the problem, Detective. Rachel was paid in cash as temporary help. I don't have much paperwork on her." The address Rachel had provided led to a vacant apartment that had been empty for 3 months. The phone number was disconnected. Even her references were fabricated. The previous employers she'd listed had never heard of anyone named Rachel. Kowalski expanded her investigation into Melissa's background, searching for anyone who might harbor enough hatred to commit such an elaborate murder. The victim's life seemed remarkably free of serious conflict. No bitter ex-boyfriends, no workplace enemies, no financial disputes. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Katie Hartwell called Tuesday evening with information she'd initially dismissed as unimportant. "Detective, I remembered something about Rachel," Katie said. "When I saw her at our house Saturday morning, something seemed familiar. I couldn't place it at the time, but I think I know who she really is." Katie explained that Rachel bore a strong resemblance to Crystal Morrison, Melissa's estranged cousin, who had been cut out of their grandmother's will 5 years earlier. The family feud had been bitter, with Crystal claiming that Melissa had manipulated their grandmother into changing the inheritance. "Crystal always blamed Melissa for losing her share of Grandma's estate," Katie continued. "She threatened revenge, but we never took it seriously." The woman calling herself Rachel was indeed Crystal Morrison, Melissa's cousin, who had been disinherited after their grandmother discovered Crystal's drug addiction and theft from the family business. The $300,000 inheritance had gone entirely to Melissa, who used it to pay for college and start her career. Crystal had spent 2 years planning her revenge, learning about industrial chemicals through a boyfriend who worked in leather manufacturing. She'd carefully infiltrated the wedding by posing as temporary catering help, knowing Melissa's trusting nature would prevent her from being questioned too closely. The lavender gin fizz was perfect because only Melissa drank it, and the distinctive taste would mask any chemical flavor. Crystal had calculated the dosage to ensure Melissa would suffer maximum agony before dying, timing the poison to activate during her honeymoon night. The betrayal cut deep, family destroying family over money, using the most sacred celebration as the stage for murder. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. If you made it to this point, drop a comment with "I'm still here." Let's see who is still watching. If you are enjoying this content, like, subscribe, and share it with your loved ones to protect them from the same tragedy happening to them in the future. Crystal Morrison was arrested 3 days later at a motel in Kansas City, still carrying the fake identification she'd used to infiltrate the wedding. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Security footage, chemical residue in her apartment, and text messages to her boyfriend detailing her revenge plans. During the trial, Crystal showed no remorse. She testified that Melissa stole her inheritance and deserved to suffer. "She always acted so perfect, so innocent," Crystal spat from the witness stand. "But she manipulated our grandmother against me." The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning a guilty verdict on charges of first-degree murder and aggravated assault. Crystal received life in prison without the possibility of parole. David struggled to rebuild his shattered life. The man who had lost his wife on their wedding night developed severe PTSD and required months of therapy to function normally. He eventually relocated to Minnesota, unable to remain in Cedar Rapids, where every street corner held memories of Melissa. The Hartwell family was devastated by the double betrayal, losing Melissa and discovering that her own cousin had orchestrated the murder. Linda Hartwell suffered a nervous breakdown and required hospitalization. Katie abandoned her nursing studies temporarily, consumed by guilt over not recognizing Crystal's true identity sooner. Tom Hartwell summed up the family's pain. "We didn't just lose Melissa that night. We lost our faith in family, in safety, in the belief that good people are protected from evil." Looking back, several warning signs had been ignored or dismissed. Crystal's bitter reaction to the inheritance dispute should have been taken more seriously by family members. Her history of drug addiction and theft indicated someone capable of extreme behavior when desperate. The catering company's failure to properly vet temporary employees created the opening Crystal needed to access the wedding. Mrs. Patterson admitted she'd hired Rachel without conducting background checks, relying only on a brief phone conversation and fake references. Security at wedding venues often focuses on protecting gifts and preventing gate crashes, but rarely considers the threat of deliberate poisoning by someone with inside access. The Brucemore mansion has since implemented stricter vendor verification procedures. This case highlights the vulnerability we all face when dealing with estranged family members who feel wronged by inheritance decisions or family disputes. Money and perceived injustice can transform relatives into dangerous enemies, especially when combined with substance abuse and mental health issues. The most chilling aspect is how easily Crystal infiltrated a celebration surrounded by people who loved Melissa. Her trusting nature, the same quality that made her beloved by friends and family, became the weakness her killer exploited. Prevention requires difficult conversations about family conflicts, professional background checks for all wedding vendors, and recognition that inheritance disputes can create lasting, dangerous resentment that may surface years later in unexpected ways. Several elements of this case remain mysterious. How long had Crystal been planning this specific method of murder? Did she have other potential targets if the wedding plan had failed? Could better communication within the family have prevented this tragedy? The investigation also revealed that Crystal had researched other industrial chemicals, suggesting she might have had backup plans if the leather solvent hadn't been available. What could you do differently if you were in the same position? How would you handle family conflicts that involve money or inheritance disputes? Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. Was justice truly served? Can a life sentence ever balance the scales when someone destroys an entire family's happiness in pursuit of revenge?